Bonjour, and welcome to more review for story settings. Authors describe setting by using different things. So they will include details about time and place and environment. Now, environment can include things such as weather, societal norms, or societal rules. Things like that can be environment. Now, when you're talking about time, you're going to look for some specific words, such as the time of day: early morning, dawn, dusk, sunset, daytime, nighttime, midnight. And if the story takes place in more historical times, you would look for clues such as ancient times, Middle Ages, Revolutionary War, Civil War, World War II, the Great Depression, segregation, Victorian times. Now, obviously, these are all Western points of reference. So if you're reading something set in a more Eastern setting, there would be different points of reference. When we're talking about place, there's general locations like desert, rainforest, city, country, suburbs, neighborhood, schools, woods, ocean. But when you're talking about more specific locations, these are proper nouns, so these all must be capitalized, right? So Peru Middle School, London, England; Stewart's, Madison Square Garden; Donovan's house, Cedar Park; room M26. Those will all be capitalized because they're proper nouns, whereas general locations tend not to be because they're not specific. When we're talking about environment, we're talking about the seasons like spring, summer, fall, and winter, but we're also talking about weather: stormy, sweltering, freezing, humid, frigid, windy, breezy, calm, crisp, cloudy, overcast. So we're going to talk about some specific genre settings, and I'm only giving you 4. There's many, many genres, but I'm only giving you 4 on here. So science fiction takes place in improbable places. So things like in space tends to be science fiction. It isn't always. In the future, on a planet in the Milky Way, this genre must be something that could happen, and it usually includes futuristic technology. So if it's, Star Wars is, I think we usually put Star Wars in the science fiction genre, but I think it might actually be more fantasy with things like the Force and things like that. So I'd have to look at that more closely. But fantasy can also take place in outer space. So just because it's on outer space doesn't mean it is definitely science fiction. It has to be probable, right? We have the technology, this could happen. Excuse me. And you have historical fiction, which takes place in the past. So you have the ancient times, the Middle Ages, Civil War, World War II, 19th century, Victorian times. These things might have happened in real life, but they're fiction, so they didn't happen, but they could have happened because they're realistic. But in order to be historical fiction, it's got to be 50 years in the past or more. So I think 50 years from 2023 is somewhere in the 1970s. So science fiction would be like Warcross by Marie Lu, or Scythe, or Illuminae. Those all are science fiction novels. As far as historical fiction goes, The Book Thief, Fever 1793, or Liddy. Those are all based on things that really happened, but the characters themselves are not real. Right? We have realistic fiction, which is in the present or recent past. So you have real places, a home, a neighborhood, it can take place up to 50 years in the past. So anything 49 years or closer to our time, is realistic fiction. 50 or later is historical fiction. And then we have magical places, which is fantasy. So fantasy usually includes castles, magical worlds, made-up places, far-off lands, usually have magic and or fictional races such as elves and orcs, fairies, dragons, drow, dwarves, kinder, dragonborn. There's tons. So some realistic fiction would be Fault in Our Stars, The Hate U Give, and then some fantasy would be Percy Jackson. So Percy Jackson is, it takes place in more recent times, but because of the element of magic that goes on and the mythology that goes on, it is fantasy. Harry Potter, Legendborn, Twilight, those are all fantasy. So tone and mood. Now, these are easy to mix up, and the thing to remember is it's the author's tone and the reader's mood. So the author's tone are the words that a writer uses to convey their attitude towards a specific subject, right? So the narrator's attitude, the author's tone. And mood is the reader's mood. It's the feelings you get while reading. The mood is based on the tone. So the words from the tone will create a feeling, which is a mood in the reader. Let's look at an example. We have an excerpt here. The room was decorated with bright streamers and balloons. Big red, orange, yellow, and blue balloons hung in all the corners of the room. There was a giant birthday cake in the center of the table. Glitter and confetti were everywhere. The bright sun shining through the windows made the party room even more warm and inviting. So the author uses phrases like decorated with bright streamers, balloons hung in all the corners, it's warm and inviting, and it suggests cheer. So the author's tone are the words that the author is using. The reader's mood, you might feel cheerful or happy or joyful or playful based on the words that the author uses. Let's try another one. The road to the castle was muddy and wet. As a thunderstorm started to roll in, the villagers walked in silence along the side of the road with their heads down and in a heaviness in their step. Ahead, the ominous castle was gray and looked uninviting. They knew what their future held, but they had no option except to keep going forward. So the author uses words such as muddy and wet, heads down, uninviting, ominous, castle, to suggest what? Gloom, right? It's a gloomy setting. The author's tone is very gloomy. So the reader's mood might include feelings such as sad or worried, cheerless or depressed. See how the author's tone, the words, affect how the reader feels? All right. That is all for this lesson. So, adios for now.